was called the deal of the century, and in many respects, it probably was. That's, of course, the deal that saw West Ham moving in as tenants to the London Stadium. And the reason that it was called the deal of the century is because really it was funded by the taxpayer by and large. Stadium and paid for by the Olympics in 2012. We'd had a new roof put on, the biggest cantilevered roof in world football, which is really quite a boast, I guess. Unfortunately, I think as time has gone on, it's appeared that that deal of the century might have started to become a bit of a hindrance to West Ham. And in terms of what Everton are doing on their new stadium, it looks like, I guess, in Karren Brady's successful attempts to get the very best deal possible at the time for West Ham, it appears now we're operating with one hand tied behind our back, despite the fact that our rent is very, very low. West Ham have no real staffing costs on match day, but of course we don't really have to put staff or do have any catering costs. But that also means we don't have any catering revenue. But that's really small fry when you factor in what Everton have just announced, particularly bearing in mind we're now in the age of PSR and FFP as it was before it, and whatever's about to come next. The money that you can generate for from your own organic revenue streams has become increasingly important. So I've got Gio next to me again today, and he's going to explain in a second just why Everton have done what they've done, how good it is for Everton, and why West Ham, and in particular Karren Brady, probably missed a trick by the way that we've been running things, and particularly with our lack of a relationship, for want of a better phrase, with the London Stadium. Before we do that, got a couple of things. We've got our raffle. Our raffle finishes tomorrow, and the raffle is for a signed Jared Bowen shirt, which Gio is very beautifully, well, sort of modelling, holding it up there. We also got a second prize and a third prize, which are Prague programs from the Conference League final, both signed, not by Gio, not by myself, but by Jared Bowen. The link is in the description below. Tickets are £5 each. It closes tomorrow, about 8 p.m.
Yeah.
Gio? 8 p.m. tomorrow. If you buy 2 tickets, you get the third one free. We very much appreciate it if you go and have a look whilst you're there, even if you don't indulge in the raffle. If you give us a little follow on our raffle page, we'll be running a lot more competitions, a lot more stuff during, well, what's left of this season, through the summer and well into next season. Also, what Gio's about to speak about now is that there's a certain level of confusion sometimes in the way that amortization, in the way that PSR is certainly reported, and certainly a difference between a PSR and cash flow, which are two very, very different things. So because of that, the wise man to my right or left, or wherever he bloody is, he's far wiser than me because he already knows the difference between his right and lefts. He is going to be doing a 3-part series. First part starting next week over on Patreon, where he is going to be basically explaining PSR, the current financial regulations, what they mean to West Ham, and he's been doing a 3-part series, which starts next week on Patreon. So if you fancy giving that a little dabble, you can take advantage of our free trial. It's patreon.com/Hammers Chat. Links in the description below. Just type Hammers Chat Patreon into Google if you want, and you'll find it easy enough. Gio, the rented floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah. That common phrase in life, short-term pain, long-term gain, I think is the opposite for West Ham and long-term stadium. I think we got short-term gain, but long-term pain, and I think there's more to come. But the biggest example, and there's going to be examples. There's already been examples. There's a big example now, and there will be examples in the future, which is West Ham fans will turn around and go, hang on a minute, we can't do this. You've got that incredible testimony or lack of incredible testimony, for example. We can't do that. We're not able to do that. But the big one, which came out yesterday, was Everton selling the naming rights to their stadium at Bramley-Moore Docks. They've sold it to Hill Dickinson, which is a lawyer firm, which was formed in 1810 in Liverpool. So it's got like the origin is from Liverpool. Now they are international. Now they've got offices in the UK, in Europe, and in Asia. So they're big. They are huge. But it was formed in Liverpool. So they've got a company on board, which has that sense of community to it as well. But here's the big thing. 10 million a season they're getting for their naming rights because they've done it right. Because if we were to try and change our stadium name now, it wouldn't work. It just wouldn't work. Let's take Boyle Sports, given the rumor around the shirt sponsorship. If they took the stadium naming rights, which they may do in future, and we tried to say, oh, the stadium's now called the Boyle Sports Arena. No one is calling it that. Everyone is still referring to it as a London Stadium. So, from a branding perspective, it's really bad business to try and take over the naming rights at the London Stadium because it won't be called that. The best example to give, well, there's two. One is St James's Park when Mike Ashley changed it to Sports Direct Arena. No one called it that. The commentators did because they had to. But the fans, Newcastle and otherwise, still called it St James's Park. The other example is Arsenal. Immediately, it was called the Emirates Stadium. And everyone refers to it as the Emirates Stadium. It's not the stadium name, well, it is, but through naming rights. And then you have a look now. If I was to say to you, what's the Spurs Stadium called? You probably don't even know.
No, because they've kept it vague on purpose, so as they
Tell it
can
in future.
sell the name. Yes.
Like Brentford, it's called the G-Tech Community Stadium, but it was easy to switch over to that once they sold the naming rights. We can't do that now. We're stuck. That stadium been around since 2012. It's been in use, so 13 years now it's been used. We've been in there since 2016. 9 years we've been in there, and it's been called that. So Everton have moved quick. So now on, you may call it the Bramley Moore Stadium. Evertonians, I think, will refer to it as that. Scousers may. But the common football fan, I think they'll just call it the Hill Dickinson Stadium because we'll get used to calling it that. But 10 million a year they're getting for that stadium naming rights. What that means for PSR, that stadium naming rights counts towards PSR. So they've just essentially just banked a 10 million profit like that. So they gain flexibility. But because PSR is a 3-year rolling period, now obviously the way the financial regulations should and could be a way to change, but we've got to wait for Manchester City's breach of 115 charges. That needs to be cleared up before we can switch over to the new model. So work with me here. But this is why we could have and should have done something about it years ago. Because Everton now bank 10 million now, they bank 10 million next season, the season after. In 3 seasons' time, under the current PSR model, that shows 30 million of profit. That allows them to spend 30 million and it's covered by the stadium naming rights. We can't do that. We haven't done that. Now, if we were to get an equivalent deal, 10 million a season, LLDC take their 4 million because of in the contract it is that the first 4 million goes to the London Stadium and anything after that gets split. But if we took 10 million, now I should add context. This is one of the most expensive stadium naming right deals in football. Like it's greater than Dortmund's, for example. So they've done really well, Everton. But even if we sold it for 10 million, they get there, we get 3 million. That gives us 12 million wiggle room with the PSR thing. And that's why I say go back to 2016. If we had a similar deal lined up back then, we would have had 12 million extra to spend every 3-year rolling period. And every time an example like this happens, I think it just demonstrates that Brady's really had her thong pulled down when it comes to signing this deal.
Yeah, but probably not by Sadiq Khan, funnily enough, because depends which way you want to look at that analogy, really. Because I think this is yet another example of the example that we got with the club not getting on with the stadium.
Yeah.
And it was something I was speaking about the other day when we were talking about potential Turner takeovers and what that could mean with regard to anybody that wanted to take West Ham over dealing with the stadium. Now, the LLDC, which is basically an arm's length management organisation of the stadium, they have already shown by the fact that they negotiated with Pi Capital away from West Ham when they thought Pi Capital was going to take West Ham over. They negotiated with them before they'd even had their first takeover bid for shares. So they've already shown a willingness to actually, if the right person or who they perceive to be the right person is in charge of West Ham, there'll be some negotiations. At very least, a stadium partnership is up for grabs. There's some wriggle room. Basically, whilst perhaps not everything can be torn up in that stadium, after all, Delaware North have got a long contract there at the moment. But there's wriggle room and there's discussions. It's really the problem seems to be between the current West Ham hierarchy, in particular Karren Brady, actually, and the stadium, but not just the stadium, because the stadium ultimately is is run by the LLDC, who are answerable to London Assembly, who of course are answerable to the mayor, Sadiq Khan. I don't know. I've never been in the same room as them all together, and you hear that Sadiq Khan and Karren Brady can't be in the same room together. Well, that's really, really unhealthy. You've also got, if you go and just do a quick Google search on it, you'd be able to see there is so many litigations and legal precedents set between the stadium and the club. It's ridiculous. They've been at each other's throats legally and had to pay each other compensation, and they've had to sue each other so many times that it's just not a healthy situation for any landlord and tenant relationship. You wouldn't want that at all. And I think we're now getting to this now where sometimes you can have too good a deal as well.
Yeah,
So
100%.
was the initial rental agreement that we had cheap and good value for West Ham? Well, absolutely it was. Put aside whether you think the stadium is good or crap, and of course it's too far from the pitch, and we've all got stuff that we've described on numerous occasions on Hammer's Chat before. But it was so cheap that it made it impossible for the LLDC or even the stadium to turn a profit. Not only that, they were making them a huge loss, and even little things where you might just try and get some goodwill with somebody. We didn't like the fact that it had a green. No stadium should have a carpet, right? But let's just accept that we got one for the time being. We didn't like the fact that there was a green carpet around the pitch because the players didn't like it. They didn't know when it was going on for a throw in. They couldn't. They didn't have the correct depth of perception when they were playing. So we needed a different colour border around the pitch. So we decided what the thing to do was a claret carpet. We tried to insist that the stadium paid for that. Stuff like that is not good. Now, I think I understand it was about £250,000, a lot of money, but in football club terms, it's not. Things like that, by saying, well, we want the carpet change. Oh, by the way, but if you look at the small print, you've got to pay for it. Stuff like that doesn't create goodwill. And if you've ever been to London Stadium, you walk through if you ever go into the stadium tour, you've got the main lobby where the corporate section is. On the left, you've got the West Ham offices. On the right, you've got the stadium offices. There is literally a lobby and a corridor between them, yet they communicate via solicitors' letters. A lot of these people are probably eating in the same canteen and stuff like that. So this is a crazy situation, and just we're in an unadvantageous position really with it now, and this is really, really bad. You just wonder, had there been that better relationship from the start, has that hindered the naming rights?
100%. 100%. Because either Brady is unwilling to help or incapable of helping, possibly both. But what she isn't is neither. Just
Yes.
at least one of those two things. She doesn't want to help them, or she can't help them.
Well, I think we can all say we might not like what she's done. She's definitely capable.
Yeah, because if the rumours are true that Boyle Sports is paying 12.5 million a year, that's a good shirt sponsorship financially. You may not like the gambling company, but it's a 25% increase on what Betway were paying us. So she's able to get some commercial deals done, but she wasn't able to get this one done for whatever reason. And you give it the massive benefit of doubt, which is she wanted to help and she could help. She wasn't allowed to help. Well, actually, yeah, it's cost the LLDC 4 million plus a year. But actually, as we're discovering with the Everton deal, but not just Everton, Brentford have got one as well. It's actually cost West Ham a handful of million every single season. Now we've been in there for nine years now. So say it's 3 million a season, it's 27 million West Ham have lost out on because we were unable to facilitate aiding a stadium naming rights partnership. And now we're coming into this territory where we're being told, put aside whether you believe it or not, just go along with it for 2 minutes. We're being told West Ham are so skint, we can't spend any money, we're so poor. Well, actually, that 3 million a season would have been very, very beneficial. That 3 million a season is actually far greater than the money they made when they removed the concessionary discounts. So it just goes to show. I think there will be more examples in future as well. Maybe not drastic ones like when there's a new Old Trafford and that stadium naming rights get sold for 40 million a season. We can't compare it to that, but we can certainly look at Everton in terms of where we are as stature as a football club and whatnot, and say, well, actually, they get 10 million. What I would also suggest is that stadium naming rights has come as a result of being plugged into your local community. That a Liverpool brand has said, actually, we want our name on there. We'll be proud to sponsor that stadium. We want to connect up and have this relationship. And I'm pretty certain there's going to be some great hospitality benefits for Hill Dickinson for all their big clients and stuff like that to come over to Everton, new stadium, we'll wine you and dine you. I'm sure London Stadium has that capabilities as well.
Oh,
So yeah, I think it just puts West Ham to shame a little bit. But I think more importantly, I think it puts the London Stadium to shame a little bit. But actually, I don't think it looks great on Karren Brady at all because ultimately it's not her responsibility to get a stadium, but she's publicly said, "Oh, we're willing to help them get one." Well, they've still not got one, so either you're incapable or you are lying, and actually you're unwilling. But what we do know is financially, West Ham have lost out on what could have been a very, very healthy financial package, not just this season, next season, for the last 9 seasons. And we're going into next season or a 10th season at that stadium. Still no stadium naming right, let's just say 3 million a year. That's 30 million now it's cost us. That's a player.
yeah, absolutely it is. And I just think even if there was the intention there to help them, now the relationship has broken down so far that how are you possibly going to sit in a room with a group of people and even look sincere that you're about to help them when there has been so much legal wrangling going on and you basically don't speak. So I think that has hindered it. Just and I just finally, just before we leave, I just think that what did seem to be a really, really good deal at the time when we moved in there and probably was a good deal. FFP, which at the time was spoken about, it wasn't really enforced. There wasn't really much of this going on. And now you're seeing ever more stringent, ever more strict applications of the rules, which then became PSR and at some point are going to be 85% of your turnover or whatever the
And
case
wait,
may be.
just wait until the government get involved with their regulator as well.
This is it. So yeah, I think what did appear to be a really good deal each and every year is becoming an increasingly bad one.